So this is another quick video on using your machine and how to get started, along with some further hints and tips of that. So when you first get your TM6 delivered, you need to remove the protective film. So you'll also find there's some blue protective film on these arms. Often people don't realize that is just protection to be removed. So you can take that off. When you're turning it on or off, you literally push and hold this button just to turn that on. There is a feature where it will turn off after 15 minutes of inactivity. So, if you forget to turn it off, it will turn itself off. Not while it's cooking, but just, if you're not using it as well. And then, so when you turn this on, this is your home screen. So you've got these three dials, which are touch screens. So whichever one is the largest is the one that you will then activate by turning the dial. So you've got the time, the temperature, and the speed. Another thing to note with the speed here, you can see a little picture of some blades. If you push those, that will turn on the, if you push those, that will turn on the reverse blades, and you'll see that now has that little backwards reverse sign. So that's if you're wanting to manually use this. Obviously, all of these features are built into Cookidoo, so you don't even have to think about it. But if you're wanting to manually use your machine, that's how you turn on your reverse blades. You can set the speed, and it will just start counting up as that is doing something. But if you're wanting to set the temperature, you do have to set a time as well. That's just a safety feature so that you can't accidentally just set something with a temperature, walk away and completely forget it. If you're manually cooking, you will need to set a time to do that. So if you swipe this way, you'll have access to your Cookidoo screen where you can search for recipes. I do prefer to use Cookidoo on my phone on the app, because once you send that to Cook Today, it's instantaneously on your machine, and I find that much quicker. But should you want to, you have access to Cookidoo here as well. One thing to note, when you turn your machine on, you just need to allow it to have just a minute or so to connect to your internet and connect to Cookidoo. If you turn it on and immediately start pressing buttons, it might not have connected to those yet. So just allow those pop-ups to come up and tell you that that's connected before you start pressing things. There's a new feature that's been launched. There's this little arrow here at the top that you can click into, and there's a timer. So you might like to use this if you, say, have made some bread dough and you just want to set a timer to remind yourself to allow that to prove for 2 hours and then come back and check it. You can do that rather than setting an alarm on your phone or on your kitchen timer. There's now one built in as well, which is handy. If you swipe the other way, this is how you access all of your manual modes on the machine. So I'll run through these. Scales, I also use a lot outside of Cookidoo. So all I would do is take off the measuring cup and then place a bowl or a plate or something on the top, and then tear the scales, so that's 0, and then just use these as scales if I'm needing to weigh things. You've got dough mode. So if you go into that, you can manually set this for how long you want it to knead your dough for, and it will alternate the blades to mimic a kneading action. You have got turbo. So I use turbo for if you have, say, dough on your blades or some cake batter or something around your blades, and you're wanting to put turbo on maybe for 1 or 2 seconds, it will spin the blades really, really fast and flick it all off around the side of the bowl. So it's really easy for you to then remove. I also use it if I'm wanting to dry my blades. So say I'm doing something where I am toasting and grinding spices and I need a nice dry bowl, but I've just washed it or done something previously. I will dry the bowl with a tea towel, head to turbo mode and spin the blades a few times, and then when you open the lid, you'll see the water has spun round. If you repeat that process until basically you're not getting any more water come off the blades, it's a really nice way just to help make sure they're super, super dry for certain recipes. And you'll probably only need to do it twice, to be honest, and then there'll be no more water coming off them. Egg boiler is a really fun function that we've got. So it'll give you a little bit of information about eggs, size of eggs, whether they're coming from the fridge, how much water to pop in and all that. So you can just cross out of that, and then you can just turn the dial to pick how you would like your eggs cooked, from soft all the way through to hard. So that's quite handy for in the mornings when you're wanting to boil your eggs. Pre-clean, I use probably the most of all of these features. So all you will do is fill the bowl with water. So you're going to fill, again, this is all kind of written out for you, but inside the bowl, I don't know if you can see that, there are basically two, there's some lines. So there's one and there's a two, because this basically bowl goes up to 2.2 litre capacity. So you're going to fill the bowl up to the 1 mark with water. And then pop that in and do a tiny squeeze of washing up liquid, and don't go nuts because you'll have a bubble bath on your hand. It just needs a small amount. Pop the lid on. Very importantly, make sure that you put the measuring cup in, so that's all nice and sealed. And then you can pick the type of wash that you're wanting to do, and it will heat the water up and whiz it round like the inside of the dishwasher. So there's a short one, which is only a couple of minutes long for sort of quick ones. There's a dough one if you've been making breads, and that won't heat the water up quite as much, just so it doesn't like bake the water onto the blades. Universal, you'll use probably majority of the time. Fat or caramel, so say you've been doing fudge or caramels or honeycombs and stuff, you'll use that one. And then browning, for if you've got some kind of browning on the bottom of your bowl, so you've been sauteing some onions and that's taken on a bit of colour, you can use that function as well to help you to remove that. Blend, so if you're just wanting to make a smoothie or use it as a normal blender, you can do that. And yeah, just use that as a normal blender. Chop, so this one, in the back of your Simple Ideas cookbook, there's a section that kind of gives you an indication on chopping and how long you might like to chop something if you're wanting to do it manually. But now they've put that on to the machine itself. So this is a new feature they've added recently, and you can just search on here what you're wanting to chop, and it will tell you based on the weight how long. The settings are all pre-programmed into here to make that super easy for you. Just got a quick drink. Okay, so that's chop. Kettle, excuse me. You can use this as a kettle mode should you wish to boil your water. Warm up for reheating your dishes, also really lovely for mulled wine at Christmas, and that'll just keep that nice and toasty warm for you. Thicken, so again, this is if you're wanting to manually use this, but say you're making a béarnaise sauce or a hollandaise sauce, the thicken mode is all built into the Cookidoo recipes, but that's then used to thicken sauces or your gravies or something. You can put that on. You've got rice cooker mode, and again, if you're starting out, I would say look at the recipes on Cookidoo, because there's a beautiful recipe for steamed rice, but you do have the option here as well for manual use. Fermentation for making your yogurts, or it's actually really handy even for if you're making bread doughs on a really cold day and they're just not quite able to rise because maybe your house is a bit too cold. You can force proof a dough with the fermentation mode, and what you would do is just place your bread dough maybe wrapped in a silicone baking mat or something in your aroma on top with some water in the bowl. Put it on fermentation mode, which will heat it up to maybe 37 degrees, and you can sort of force your dough to proof, which is quite a handy little tip. These three functions here, you have got slow cook, sous vide, and peeler. So these ones, you need the attachment of the blade cover and peeler. So slow cook, that will then just be used to cover the blades so that if you're cooking something for a lengthy period of time, that it doesn't come into contact with the blades. To attach this, you'll just hold the top. So you've got the bit there with the hole. in at the bottom, and that will just sit nicely over your blades like that, and just to cover them. So for slow cooking, for sous vide, again, that covers the blades, or for peeling potatoes, and that will give you an indication. It will give you the description. So again, you'll tell you how much root vegetables that you can put in there, how much water, and it will basically turn and agitate and peel your potatoes for you. So that's handy to know. And with this one, it'll sit nicely over the blades, and you won't hear it tinking around when you are using that. So if you are using it and you're hearing some bashing around, it means you probably not put that on properly, and you want to stop the machine and have a look at what you've done there. Make sure that that's done properly before you continue with that. And then these are two new additions as well that came out this year. So it's the grating and the slicing, which is the cutter attachment, which just sits inside the bowl here. And that can be used for, depending on which way the blade inside that is put, you can grate or slice thick or thin. So that's new. And the good thing with this is occasionally you'll turn this on and you'll just see updates available. And because it's all Wi-Fi enabled, it will just update itself with any new functions and features that are added. And there's not many kitchen appliances that get better with age and just constantly update themselves. So pretty handy. That's what all those functions are for. So then if you come back to the home screen, you will see these little 3 dots in the corner here. So if you click onto those, that will pull up where you have stored my recipes. So this is where you save all your recipes into your collections. You'll find those stored here. You've got my week, which are the ones that you have sent to cook today or added to your calendar. Or if you wanted to go back to something you've recently cooked, you can look at that in here as well. Settings wise, you probably only go into there, like, so say you can put it into transportation mode if you go into settings, and so if you're taking it somewhere, it'll just lock the bowl into position and keep that nice and secure. That one's quite useful. Or logging into other people's Wi-Fi if you're taking it outside of the home, again, you'll find all of that in there. But the one you'll mostly come to is my week, and that's, like I said, where all of your recipes are that you have sent through to your calendar for you to cook. So, and they'll just literally show in here like that, and you'll just click into a recipe that you're wanting to cook. If you scroll down, this is where you can see a little bit of an overview on the difficulty of the recipe, how long of your time that is going to take to cook, and the total cooking time. You also, on a lot of them, again, this is a new feature they've added this year, where there's a portion size and you can scale a recipe. So a lot of them, they're working through them because obviously there's thousands of recipes. You can scale the portions and you can choose how many you want to cook for. And by simply clicking that and clicking apply, it will adjust all of the portions, and it's all been tested for those quantities. You can scroll down and see all of the ingredients, the overview of the recipe steps, and also it's quite handy to look at these hints and tips here because there's a lot of information there along with the nutritional information. A little tip as well is on this screen. So with some recipes, if you're just wanting to cook part of a recipe as opposed to the entire one, like, so say you've seen a recipe for some meat that includes a red wine jus, and you just want to cook the red wine jus and not the full recipe, you can find that step along here, and you can literally just click to there and it will jump you directly to that part of the recipe. So that's quite handy to be aware of as well. So you'll literally just follow what it says on the screen and push next, which is the green button up here. I'll show you on this dial, when it's asking you to turn the dial, it gives you a little indication. So it says at the bottom, turn to speed 8, but there's also a little marker here, which shows you where you're turning to. If you just turn in a really confident, smooth motion, it will take you to that point and stop. And if you're ever wanting to stop it, you just push the dial and it will stop and pause where you're at. So that's how you do that. I'll show you the scales. Okay, so say you're then wanting to weigh something in. Often I will then take the lid off to give me full access to the bowl. So just bear in mind, if you do that, it's obviously going to then start showing a minus reading, but you can tear the scales by just pushing this green tear button, and that will zero the scales. So just make sure when you're cooking, you don't start adding things in before the scales are reading 0, or you won't have any idea about how much stuff you put in. So that's just one thing to look out for. So then if I just get to a cooking bit, I will show you, that's just 5 seconds. Let me just scroll through to where it's doing some cooking. So if I was to then set this to cook, that button that said next has now turned to preview. So I can skip ahead and see what the next steps are and get my ingredients ready for the next steps, which is really handy. And then all I need to do, you can see up here, it's now telling me the time that's still left of that step. But I can push this little green bookmark and that will jump me back to the recipe. And if the time runs out, it will just take me back there anyway, so I don't have to worry about being further along in the recipe when the time runs out. But it's just quite handy to preview the next few steps so you can be even more speedy and get prepared for the steps ahead. You can also, if you're cooking and doing something and say you're wanting to multitask and do things at the same time, you can click these 3 dots here, and you can also open the scales if you're wanting to weigh something, ready to get bits prepared for next steps in the recipe or doing something alongside. You can do that. You can also jump to the recipe overview and details here as well from those 3 dots. If you do come out of a recipe while you're in the middle of it, it will just show you this little green bookmark, so you can still access a lot of the other functions and features on your Thermomix, and then just click the bookmark because you've got that recipe open and it will take you back to where you were within the recipe. So I think that gives you a very quick overview of all the functions, the features using your TM6 and getting started. Hope that was handy.